Let's talk about space. Real space.
Yes.
In technology with Jonathan J. Ratnam.
So, guys, have you heard of Elon Musk?
Only this week.
I've heard his name bantered about.
Yeah, so he was selling flamethrowers last week, and this week he was revolutionizing the rocket game again. So,
Classic.
you guys know that he has this rocket called the Falcon 9,
Sure
which
does.
they
Neon
launch,
Falcon.
and it lands. It comes back to its landing pad, and it has these like 3 legs that come out, and it lands itself. Have
Yeah.
you seen that video?
I saw it.
Yeah.
It's like watching a rocket in rewind.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Amazing.
So they've managed to stick 3 of them together to make a heavy rocket, like it can launch more stuff.
You'd think a heavy rocket would be harder to launch, right?
Yeah.
Is it heavy because it's full of fuel?
Yeah, pretty much. So this thing can take...
Dude literally
brain.
looks like he's having a party.
Yeah. Apparently, it's not a real person. We'll get to that.
Apparently...
Rockets.
What do you mean apparently?
He looks so real.
It's
a
okay.
conspiracy.
Anyway, we're looking at footage of the spaceman in his car, and that's actually the real spacesuit that they designed that spacesuit
And that's
Cool.
a real
specifically
Tesla.
for. Yeah, so that's the
Does that Tesla
specific
plan
SpaceX.
to operate once it lands back on Earth?
No.
Okay.
So what's revolutionary about this heavy rocket?
So this heavy rocket's revolutionary because it's like the heaviest rocket. So when you say heavy, we mean it can lift the most stuff. It's like the heaviest one since Saturn V, which was the one that took the Apollo spacecraft to the moon
Oh.
and cost about $1 billion every time it launched.
Oh.
That's a pretty penny.
Yep.
That's a lot of
So that was Cold War money. So that was back in the days when they were splashing the money at NASA because they needed to beat the Russians. So it was a massive incentive, so they had heaps of money. Since the Cold War ended, we've been very stagnant in terms of rocket technology, so it's basically stayed the same. Most of the improvements in space stuff have come because computers have gotten really good, and they've gotten a lot smaller, and now you can put like a CubeSat in space, and it does awesome stuff that's actually kind of useful, and it's like really small and cheap to make. So that's where space has gone, but it hasn't gone in like a very... inspiring way, if that makes sense. We've never had that moment where we're like, whoa, that's crazy. Like even the space shuttle predates us being born, at least. It's the 80s tech. So feels like space technology has been very stagnant until this point, because they just launched this rocket, and this rocket is capable of taking 64 tons of stuff into a low Earth orbit, which is the same orbit as the space station, so it's pretty close to the Earth.
That's a lot of zucchinis.
For a comparison, the next biggest rocket that was flying, that was like doing commercial flights for people, can only take 22.8. So this is more than doubled the previous heaviest rocket that was operating.
Wow.
So basically that means that you can put way bigger satellites into space. So
Yeah.
they're actually pretty heavy. The satellites they put up into that you get your satellite TV from, you have to point your satellite at the right spot. They can double the size of those things now.
What else
So you
could they
could-
put up there?
So they could put up. So Elon doesn't plan to use this rocket in particular for Mars stuff.
Oh,
He wants to use his BFR, which is the next rocket.
big
Big
and rocket.
freaking rocket.
Is that actually what it is?
Yeah, that's
No,
that's-
this
he's
guy's
always
so
he always
badass.
does that.
I just made that up, but that's good to know.
No, that's why he's called it that. Anyway, but
Classic
this
Elon.
time
He's
they
a
put
real
up.
joker.
This time they put a Tesla up. So this was a test flight. So normally for test flights of rockets, they put in some sort of dummy weight, like a big block of concrete or something.
I was wondering
and he was
why
like,
they did this.
he was
I
like,
thought it was
well, I'll put
marketing.
something cool in there. Yeah, it is marketing.
Oh, okay.
but it was
definitely
like,
marketing.
you spent so much money to do this. Surely you could put something useful in there.
Yeah, nah, people don't put useful stuff because useful stuff tends to be really expensive.
Right.
So the amazing thing about this is he's made this rocket, and he reckons it's only going to cost $90 million per launch, which is dirt cheap for rockets.
That's a steal.
It's putting the price down to like maybe $1,500 for a kilogram, and
Is it-
before it was like $6,000 or more.
$1,500 for a kilogram into space.
Sounds like me flying to Queensland.
It's cheap.
Yeah.
It's really cheap.
I
So
mean, yeah.
yeah, it makes like things accessible to like way more people. So before, if you wanted that Delta rocket, you're probably looking at maybe $300 or $400 million. So it's only the biggest customers who could do it, like NASA, massive telcos, the military. This time, this thing, like smaller people, smaller companies can use it.
We could
Like-
get together, send up a
Yeah,
kilo.
if we save up a bit, I think we could send up a
Elon would love that.
few things. Yeah. So this is legitimately awesome. So the reason it's so cheap is he manages to land during the launch. So the way the thing works is it's got basically a center core made of a Falcon 9 with another rocket sitting on top of it, and strapped to the sides are 2 more Falcon 9s.
Mm-hmm.
And
So-
the engine, like the thing that goes and shoots it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're called a Falcon 9 because they've got 9 engines. They've actually got
Okay.
9 little rockets
Makes sense.
inside.
It's like 9 Falcons.
9 rocket engines. So there's 27 in all. There's the middle one and the 2 side ones. And it launches, and then the side ones run out of fuel first, or they separate off first,
Hmm.
spin around and land back at where they launch
How
from.
is that a thing? Because I read that today that they land and they're reusable.
There's a video.
Yeah.
Of it.
So there's a
They
Have you
come
seen
down
the
and-
video yet?
No.
Oh
They
wow.
just land.
Well, it's amazing. They turn around and they use a bit of they're flying back down, so they spin around. They fire the rocket for a bit to make
Yeah.
it go back where it came from. Then they fire the rocket a bit to slow it down, and then they use these little side thrusters that line it up properly. And it's got these little fins that pop out from the top that help it use aerodynamic force to line it up, and then it's got legs that pop down from the sides, and it just lands. And this time they landed both of those 2 side boosters pretty much simultaneously. It looked awesome. It looked like the cover for like a really cool sci-fi novel.
It was so cool.
It was like looking at the future.
I didn't think it was real when I watched the video. I was like,
Yeah, and then the middle one was meant to, because it keeps going for a bit longer
yeah.
than the side one, so it keeps firing after the side ones have gone off. So it's going a bit too fast to turn around and go back once it separates off the second stage. So that one was meant to land on the drone ship, which is like a big floating barge that SpaceX has made so they can land on the sea.
Okay, that's
Because you always launch out towards the sea.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to land on
Things
land.
happen,
Yeah.
that's crazy again that they just got
It's
a big drone
insane.
ship out there.
That they can do that. And then they have done that. This time it didn't work.
Oh,
The center core hit the ocean at like 500 kilometers an hour
ouch.
because its rockets didn't refire to
Yeah,
slow it down. So the slowdown burn didn't happen. But Elon was saying that of all, like, it's a test flight. So you basically, like,
What can
your
you do?
possible
Things
outcomes
It's
are
supposed to
anything.
happen, right?
Well, the possible outcomes range from anything like the whole thing explodes on the launch pad and destroys the launch
So
pad
we
as well
not,
as the
not
test.
got this footage at all.
Yeah, or all the way up to like complete success, which is basically this. The only thing they lost was that center core, and he was saying that was the bit that they could afford to lose. Because apparently the aerodynamic fins on the side Falcons are actually really hard to manufacture, and they take ages to do. So that was the thing he really wanted to get back, and he got it back. So anyway, and then the upper stage got into space, and then they burst open the fairing. And if you're watching the live stream, you've got Space Odyssey by David Bowie blasting through the music right as it pops open. And you have Spaceman here sitting in his car looking out over the blue planet.
Did we know
Was that a
gonna be
surprise?
Tesla?
It wasn't a surprise that there was going to be a car in that, because they'd been advertising that was their payload
What a
on Instagram
showman.
and things.
Love it.
Yeah, they had Space Odyssey playing on the radio. Well, like on the radio, you can't actually hear it because the cameras are in space. So I guess it was playing over the live feed. And then in the car on the little console, it says "Don't Panic" from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I'm not sure if he has a towel in there.
I also saw it says
Hopefully he knows where it is.
from made on Earth by humans.
Yeah, so on the printed circuit boards in the spaceship,
Yeah.
it's got made on Earth by humans.
Mm.
There's a few other little
Easter,
eggs.
eggs.
Yeah.
What was the made on Earth by humans?
So that when the aliens find it.
Yeah, if
That's
anyone
not
finds
like
it.
an Easter egg, like relevant from a movie.
No,
It's
that
just-
was
just
just
true.
like a
That's just
yeah,
That was
just a
an
thing.
original.
Just the facts.
Yeah. Yeah, so
What are they doing? What's this guy gonna do? Where's he gonna be in a week?
so they did a complex maneuver. So after they got into space and they blew the fairing off, they did like this maneuver where they kept going at that altitude for a while.
Did some donuts.
Yeah, because they wanted to show them US military something, but it's not really clear what. But they wanted to show them they were capable of doing a particular maneuver because they're trying to get US military contracts as well. And then they launched it off. They launched it off into a bigger orbit, which is going to take it out. Originally, it was meant to take them out to Mars.
Oh.
So it would be like a big elliptical orbit where the furthest point would be the Mars orbit, and the closest point would be Earth's orbit.
So not to Mars, to Mars orbit.
To Mars's orbit, not to line up with
Yeah.
ours, so not to land on Mars, not to hit it, because this isn't made in a clean room, so it's not made to. They don't want to contaminate
Mars.
space stuff.
I didn't.
Hopefully, it won't
I
ever
thought
hit
about that
anything.
before.
I think
So
the
you're
odds are
saying
really
that
low.
this could, like, the bacteria on this could create another life.
The bacteria could mean if they contaminated Mars, you wouldn't know if you found something on Mars if it had come from Earth.
Okay.
But it actually overshot,
So
so the
smart.
rocket performed better than they planned, and it was going out. It's going out as past the asteroid. It's going out, not past, almost out to the asteroid field, which is the next thing out from Mars.
Is they gonna have to dodge them with TIE fighters? Will they?
Yeah, I don't know if it's
Yeah.
going to hit something. It's actually
How
interesting.
long
I think
can we
people are
get
trying to
footage
figure
back
that out.
from the car for?
No, this is it.
Oh,
What
that's
we
it.
saw.
There's
Yeah,
no
I think
more.
it only had enough battery for like 12 hours,
Okay.
and then they stopped. They didn't bother putting solar cells or anything on it.
Why not?
I'm not
you
sure.
imagine
It's
if
too much
someone
effort, I
finds
guess.
It's
in
like
the
you got to
future?
put a stupid astronaut in it. Like,
Yeah.
put some bloody rechargeable batteries in
It gets complicated. You have to as you get further away, you need to have a really good antenna to
Right.
send the stuff back, and then you have to have
Just a
you have to have
test
systems to actually process all the stuff.
And solar
send it.
sails are fake, right? They're not a real thing.
No, there's a company that's trying to make us
Oh.
the solar sail. You mean the thing that propels you
Yeah.
with a sail? Yeah,
Like
that's a
an
real
Alien
thing.
Covenant?
Yeah,
Well, I thought it was.
there's a
just
company
sci-fi
that
made-up
that's
thing.
possibly one of the future launches they're going to do a test
That's cool.
flight for a
Oh,
solar
cool.
sail.
I was so sure that was fake.
It's a real thing. You get radiation pressure from light on one side and darkness on the other
Wow.
because photons have a little bit of mass.
So
Well,
you
they
can-
have momentum.
So you can actually sail in space.
Yeah, but it has to be huge.
Right.
So then this thing unfolds, it'll be the size of multiple football fields
Oh.
to get
That'd look
like
cool.
a decent amount of thrust.
And
But
it's
yeah, you can
gold,
really fold
right?
stuff in really tight. So
Yeah.
the idea would be you unfurl this massive thing, and then you just keep getting more and more momentum.
Look, this is great. Friggin' Elon's brought fun back to space.
Do you know like old movies where they're like showing the future and it's like year 2005 or something?
Yeah.
And everyone's in flying cars and stuff.
Mm.
Back then, that was actually a reasonable projection
Mm.
because they went from the start of World War II, no one had rockets,
Yeah.
to 1950s, they put a person in space.
Yeah.
Like 20 years. And then
It's crazy.
we had the space shuttle in 1980s and nothing since then. And we've even lost the space shuttle. We're getting to the point where the last person to walk on the moon might die before the next person walks on another on another planet.
Imagine if we just kept going.
We
Maybe
could
it's
end up
all
back as a
conspiracy.
one planet like population.
Right.
Because right now there's people who've walked on the moon
Yeah.
alive. But
Far
they might die before we get someone anywhere else. Well,
Is that because we don't want to send anyone there, or is this other things? to
it's
spend
because the
money
money ran out.
on? Okay.
The money was Cold War driven and it was a lot of money.
Is there anything on the moon for us?
Cheese.
Maybe if we get hydrogen fusion working, there's
Oh,
some
we
nice
could do that
helium
up
there. Some nice helium deposits.
We're running out of helium, right? Isn't that an actual problem?
Yeah, it doesn't come back.
Don't
Yeah.
you just use that for balloons? Is that what helium?
I'm gonna
is?
stop
Such a waste.
blowing up
It's actually
balloons.
really important, isn't it?
Yeah, it could be really important. Yeah, I think it is.
So
Yeah.
No more
There's
balloons.
a strategic helium reserve. America has
What
one,
will
but then they
happen to
realized
clouds?
they had too much, and then they started. That's why helium got really cheap
Well,
because they just had heaps of it.
you had it and you blew it up, right?
Yeah.
I like what you did there.
Thanks, Joel. Is there any more on SpaceX?
No.
When does it get to Mars? Did you say that?
It's not going to Mars.
It's-
It's going towards orbit.
Oh, sorry.
It's on an orbit that would have taken it about half a year
Mhm.
to get there, but because it's on a bigger orbit now, I don't know. I have no idea.
So it could end up anywhere.
Yeah, it'll probably cross the Mars orbit sooner than that 6 months, and then it'll go past it.
So are they continuing to track it, or are they just now it's in there, they're just gonna let it
Well, it
do
ran
its
out of
thing?
batteries.
They'll keep tracking it because you know where it's going to go.
Yeah.
Mathematically.
Yeah.
Mm. Mm.
Although I assume it will get really hard to find eventually because it'll be really
Do
small.
you reckon Tesla gave them the car for free? I reckon they had to pay.
It was
I think it's
Elon's,
Elon's
old
car.
That's Elon's car.
His old car.
That's
Yeah.
Elon's old.
That
That's
is
that's an
kinda funny.
old Tesla Roadster. I don't think they even make those anymore. Do they?
I don't know.
It's like the first car they made.
What's
was that-
a better way to
so good.
get rid of an old car?
Genius.
He's always about recycling, eh? Everything comes back to it. Now, that's enough about SpaceX.